Rated mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? It's time for the final countdown. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's rock.
Broadcasting from the Big Peach of Atlanta, Georgia. A show unfiltered, unscripted, raw. The Patriot Angle Podcast.
Welcome to the show, guys. Welcome. Sorry about that. Had a little glitch here. It's all right. Producer Eric is a little slow today. Definitely a little slow, but it's okay. It's what, Thursday, April 28th on the show, right? Sauce, how you doing, buddy?
Wow. Okay, quick question. What does Wi-Fi segment mean? I am totally confused.
Okay, remember the Wi-Fi that you were talking about with your some kind of issue or something at school the other day?
Oh, yes. I am so sorry about that. Yeah, my side is very glitchy, by the way. So I'm like, okay, what do you mean by? Okay, no. So yeah, so how's it going with you, Michael? I am so sorry. Well, good thing this is live. You never know what might happen.
Yeah, exactly. Eric is kind of lagging himself today, messing up the production here on the screen, but it's okay. It's okay. Welcome, guys. Happy Thursday for everybody that's joining us. What's going on with the Wi-Fi, man? You said you had some Wi-Fi over, trying to get your thesis in the other day.
Yeah, so I was trying to get my Wi-Fi in the other day, and for some weird reason that it wasn't allowed. So the weird part was, I don't know what was happening, but we were having some serious technical issues, and so they're installing new fiber cables.
Okay.
And so what happened was, while I was writing my thesis, the Wi-Fi kept on going and going out, and I'm like, bruh, come on. Like, enough. I'm like, how can anyone get anything done? And I'm like, is this the best? I'm like, well, this is the best infrastructure bill at its going at its finest. See, and that's the whole thing. Other people are like, well, isn't this great? We're getting new Wi-Fi. I'm like, no, this is a worse off. I'm like, the Wi-Fi kept on going and going out, and then we had a big thunderstorm. And what the funny part is, the thunderstorm, somewhere the lightning struck. The thunderstorm, and so now, or not struck the thunderstorm, but the lightning last night caused kind of a small, well, it's not a small fire actually. It caused some damage, and then our Wi-Fi went out again. So I thought it was like very spotty, but it was not very good.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I just sent you pictures of what the lightning caused, and that was actually right across our. That was from afar. And when I was at camp, it was right at the Wi-Fi struck, not the Wi-Fi, but the lightning struck something last night. And that was from about 10 miles out. You could see, and that was right next door to our camp. So we had to be evacuated because of lightning. It ended up being a forest fire.
We're looking at the pictures here, which we'll post on the website, guys. This is pictures of Sauce that basically sent to me. And like I said, we'll post them on the website. We'll post them on Instagram, basically what's going on here at Sauce's institute, college over there. Sauce, do you go to the school that you go to, man? Is it in the middle of nowhere?
It is. The school I go to is in the middle of nowhere, and it's a private college. And
Yeah.
so, it's a little bit odd. The closest hospital to us is about 40 minutes away, and so it's a little bit. It kind of makes it a little bit challenging. When I had my medical problems, we had to wait about 2 hours to get to the hospital. We had
Oh
to
wow.
wait for, yeah. Well, and here's the whole thing. Okay, so the whole. I just want to tell you, being like, how we need to worry more about transportation and stuff, and you know, and how we had the whole infrastructure bill. You know what I want to see? How come the roads aren't done at all? Like, even when I was in the hospital, like every single bump, you thought the ambulance driver was drunk because he was trying to swerve every pothole, and he was like swerving all over the road. And same thing on the other lane. So this whole infrastructure bill that they keep on talking about, where's that going to go? Where's that money? Why aren't the roads being fixed? Why aren't the bridges being fixed? I mean, if you're going to at least lie something, tell at least, hey, we're going to pretend we're going to fix the roads, but really, we're just going to put sand down or do something like that.
Yeah, well, this is America sauce. Obviously, where you originally come from in Russia. I mean, things are probably different, maybe, but in America, they just kind of band-aid it. You know what I mean? We'll just put a little asphalt down; it'll be okay. After a while, that asphalt, from wear and tear, from constantly being driven over it 1,000 times a day from cars and trucks and everything else, it basically gets ripped up. And
Yep.
that's that.
Well, and you also have to look. You also have to look at it during the winter. Actually, it's really bad with the roads, like right now, because we're in spring and we're almost to like warm season. So what happened was, during winter and stuff, the roads expanded because of the ice, and how the ice expands. And so now, since it's becoming like it's not all water, now you have major cracks in the road and potholes. But they just kind of bandage it over, but it gets really revealed in the spring. And I'm like, that doesn't fix anything. That makes it worse. Why don't,
Oh, yeah.
we're going through money if there's no tomorrow. At least do make it somewhat productive, and at least focus some of the money on at least repairing, like redoing the whole roads instead of just stupid
Yeah.
solar farms.
Well, you know what? We're supposed to be under this Biden agenda of Build Back Better, right? I mean, where's the building back better supposed to be coming from? Apparently, it's not Build Back Better, but build back to the best of our abilities.
Or build back better to the car shop to get new shock or get new spring shots for your car.
Yeah, right. Head over to Sears, right? Automotive. Eric, does that still exist? Eric shaking his head no on the other side of the studio. Yeah, back in the day, we used to have a company called Sears Automotive. And I'm telling you what, folks, you would never want to go to this place because these technicians that they hired, it seemed like they would hire them off the streets. Kind of like reference what Sas is talking about, with the new shocks. You would definitely need new shocks after they put the new shocks on your car like 2-3 months ago,
Yeah, and that's the whole thing and the Sears automotive people, they were not friendly whatsoever. You try to do a very ordinary. Now, I don't know if this is like the newer generation, but if you're in the newer generation, you probably are not familiar with Sears. You probably have Walmart, which is a lot nicer than Sears. But I remember going to Sears, man, one of them like was rude to me. I'm like, my goodness, I'm like, I had a bad day. You just made it worse. I'm like, I just tried to smile and you told me not to smile because it offended you. I'm like, it was a Madison, so what do you expect?
Oh, so you're well aware of Sears, the company Sears. Huh? I didn't think you would be aware of that because you're a lot younger than me and everything else. So
no, I remember Sears, and so Madison was one of the last cities to have Sears pull out, and they're not really. They're one of the last. If they're the last automotive shop, give me a iPad so I can go on YouTube to learn how to fix it before I have to go to them.
Yeah, it's sad because Sears was actually a really good company. They were like. What we used to call Sears back in the day was, basically, a type of retail place you would only go during the holidays, similar to like a Macy's or JCPenney. They would only get a huge amount of, traffic of customers during the holidays. Other than that, it would be, I mean, yeah, it's sad, but, that's
it is.
What happens with retail.
Yeah, so just so you mind, so changing the subject, by the way. So you know how so if your viewers are keeping up, if you so I just want to tell to any viewers that are keeping up. So you know how I told last Friday, I gave you an update of stating how I lost like the market's really doing bad. Well, I
Yeah,
thought
yeah. What's going on with that sauce? Has it improved a little bit or
no, it's actually I didn't want to give you the so I didn't want to give you the most recent screenshot because this morning it really tanked. And so for the first time ever, I went below $5,000. And so it was pretty bad. The lowest I got was I ended up with $5,974. That is worse than last week. And that is like I can't identify and like okay, so for the week now, I lost over $500 for the week, and we're not even on Thursday. We're not even on Friday, and I've already lost over $500. Now, I thought, and you know, the funny part is, I'm like, you know, I think I'm gonna quote myself because I said on last episode, I was like, you know, I won't be surprised if midweek next week I'd be below 5,000. And my goodness, I could give me a lottery ticket, Michael, because I was right.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's terrible what's going on with this stock market under Biden, you know, and
It's worse than last week.
yeah, it's definitely worse.
And wait till next week when wait till May 1st when the Feds are going to come out and raise the interest rates by almost 50 points in order to keep in charge of the inflation or keep ahead of the inflation. But you know, a lot of people don't really understand. You know, we have what they're doing is that with the whole market and stuff, you can't keep raising interest rates because that's going to have long-term repercussions. You know,
Oh, without doubt.
you know, and the problem. So you look at Tesla, for instance. You know, one of my portfolio is Tesla, which drives heavily, and I had to actually sell Tesla because Tesla was dipping and they were dropping really quick. So I sold it. I made about $9 on Tesla, sadly, because I was a moron. I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to wait till it kind of bounces back. But I'm like, okay, nope, it dropped by $50. I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull out before I lose any more. So what happened was I ended up pulling out of Tesla, and then I'm like, okay, they're pretty down low. And then I bought in yesterday. I bought 1.1 shares instead of 1.02 shares. So I got 1.1 shares of Tesla, but now it really tanked this morning. And so what happened was, you know, and it's not just Tesla, it's all over, you know, and it's a lot of people are selling out. And if you look at my portfolio, and my portfolio is very diversified, it screams recession, all here we come.
And got a question for you, Sauce. Why are you investing in Tesla? Does it happen to be a company that Elon Musk owns, or are you just investing in Tesla because you feel that Tesla's doing good?
No, so I'm sorry about that. So the reason why I invest in Tesla and the reason why I'm going to go towards I'm kind of considering Twitter is because of Elon Musk's he knows how to run a business. You know, look at the Boring Company, look at PayPal, look at eBay and stuff, and look at all these people that he founded, and SpaceX, you know, and that's why.
Yeah, you know, he kind of reminds me of like a Trump 2.0 with what's that?
Tony Stark more than anything, Iron Man.
You think? He kind of reminds me of a Trump 2.0, you know, with just his ability of running a business. I mean, the man is phenomenal.
And he could care less what political party you are on. And that's the whole thing that I thought. So it's funny, actually. I thought I would never get Twitter, but the same day he bought Twitter, about 5 minutes later, I made a Twitter account. And it was funny because, you know, and I want to see, okay, why is it that so many people scream, oh, I'm going to get off of Twitter, but they're still on Twitter? Like, I mean, it shows you the double hypocrisy.
I don't know. We were actually thinking about starting a Twitter account, and you know, I was never a big fan of Twitter, and this is even going back before, you know, Elon Musk ever had intentions of buying Twitter. I never really thought about doing Twitter. We always kind of stuck here, even on the show, with Facebook and Instagram. We didn't go to TikTok because we thought that was too much for, like, you know, kids making goofy videos in college and stuff like that. But, you know, I was really never a big fan of Twitter. As what I'm seeing through the news, you know, with Elon Musk, you know, kind of lifting the restrictions a little bit with Twitter, we may go to Twitter. I'm not sure, but we do have a big launch coming on Rumble, Sauce, as you know. A really big launch on May 10th, which is going to be the big launch.
Man, I tried to get on Rumble for my podcast, and they took me down.
Really?
They took my account down because apparently what happened is that Rumble was part of Google, and they used a Google URL. So what happened was, and this was actually trying to expand on my Remember God Loves You and I'll Meet You at the Finish Line podcast and stuff. Well, apparently what happened was good old Google, or should I say Mr. Disinformation search engine.
We call it Foogle here on the show. It's Foogle.
Foogle. Oh, Foogle. Well, what happened was
it's full of Foog shit, Oh. Yeah. It's an old term that we used to use back in the day, but people look at me and are like, Mike, what are you talking about?
So what happened was that they're like, well, I'm like, okay, why did I get censored off of Rumble? I'm like, I thought every conservative platform is going to Rumble and stuff. Like, well, because you got censored on Facebook, it's kind of like a domino effect. And so one of the Google people, I should have recorded the phone conversation. I mean, I feel
you should have.
I should have, because the Google people, they recorded, and I'm like, so why am I censored off of Rumble? I'm like, I thought Rumble is the last thing, like, let alone Pinterest. I understand Pinterest because I put a quote from Abraham Lincoln. I understand why I got censored off of Pinterest because of posting that. Heavens forbid you want to be patriotic. But they're like, they're like, well, if it works, they're like, for instance, you know how you were censored, you know how your PayPal account was taken off because you donated $5 to the Canadian truckers? Well, it's pretty much like that. And now because we see that your name is from Russia, and that
Sash, when you told me that story, what was it, last week or something on the show, when you said you donated only $5 measly dollars to the Canadian Truckers Association cause, I heard that and I'm like, they're gonna audit you, man, for $5. Remember, what did I say? I could understand if it was $5,000 or $50,000, but $5 measly dollars. Come on.
Well, and what happened was that apparently I don't know, the audit's still going on and stuff. Well, and my PayPal account was actually taken down. So
they took your PayPal account down?
Yeah, because I donated $5. Well, okay. And the other question is, if you're going to do that kind of a trucker.
I'm sorry, Sas. Myself, Eric, and Alicia here on the show. I mean, they're laughing on the other side of the room. You can't hear it because I usually mute them a lot, but I mean, they're laughing their ass off right now.
Well, okay. Here's my question though. Why don't they? Okay, if you're going to give $5, if you're going to get $5, if you're going to have that kind of a Christian conservative like movement, why don't you go to a platform where you don't have to rely on PayPal to give you money, to siphon money? Because you know what they're going to do? You know what they've been doing with PayPal? They've been going to businesses, and the feds and the IRS have been going to them and asking them questions.
Speaking of PayPal, since we're on the topic of PayPal, okay, have you been noticing what PayPal? A lot of accounts, man. There's a lot of accounts getting hacked in with these like fake invoices, saying that you owe this amount of money from like this company that you never even heard of. Have you been seeing that lately?
Yeah, or I've also seen this too with a lot of those companies. And for instance, what they do is that they ask for your PayPal or Cash App, and what they do is that they say, hey, you know what? I'll be your sugar mama or your sugar daddy, whatever it's called. Or like, hey, I'll be your
bots, man.
Yeah, bots. So what happens that so many people are like, oh, no, actually better yet. They're like, if you give $10, you could get $1,000 back. So it's like, because it's giving free money. Well, here's how stupid our generation really is. So one of my friends actually fell for that scam. Okay. And you know what happened to her? They sent her a fraudulent check of $3,600. Okay, and she gave over $600 of her actual cash, and so now she only had about $1,000 in. So she went and cashed out the check. Well, actually, no. So it was a virtual check, and now she owes over. She went way over, and she lost, and now she's in debt because of it. See, and
oh my God.
I don't know why don't they just get a job instead of having all these scammers come out and say, hey, we need your PayPal account or we need your Cash App thing? Because, anyone that knows that, they can take your PayPal thing and get into your account without you really knowing.
Not just PayPal, but, like
Cash
there's
App.
So many different apps out there. Cash App, you got like this one called Venmo. There's so many. so many out there, you know.
Yeah.
But that's some good stuff. Sas, I want to get into a clip here. I want to plug in because I usually like plugging in the clips.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know, which is yesterday, the other day. Was it? Yeah, it was yesterday. Where's my Eric? You got to remind me, man. Give me like a calendar or something. I'm getting old. But yeah, yesterday we had a motivational speaker, guys, joining us from the country of Canada. Happens to reside right on the other side of the river from Detroit, in a little area called Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Really, really good guy. Now, guys, I want to basically pretty much let you know that his speech and his vocabulary is not the best because he does suffer from a rare health condition of Bell's palsy. But he happens to be a very, very well motivational speaker, and he actually has his own podcast called Let's Have This Conversation with Kevin McShane that was literally on the show just yesterday, guys. You're going to want to check this out.
Hi, I'm motivational speaker Kevin McShane, and I want the chance to ditch the winter blues and start off spring on the right foot by traveling to Orlando. You know, I consider Central Florida to be my second home, and I want the opportunity to share my inspirational and inspiring story with you. Living my entire life with cerebral palsy has given me a unique perspective on life, which I'd like to share. So are you an athletic director, a high school principal, a college or university president, leader of a youth group, a human resources professional, or a business owner who wants to learn how to maximize their fullest potential while also getting premium results out of yourself and the groups that you lead? If you answered yes to any of those questions, I want the chance to inspire and connect with you. So don't be afraid to drop me an email at mcshankevin@gmail.com to learn more.
Some major flip-flopping. People should not be walking around with masks. Masks work. Fully vaccinated, you are protected, and you do not need to wear a mask. If you are vaccinated, you should still wear a mask.
You really better be very careful before you bring the children back. The default position should be to try as best as possible to keep the children in school.
Right now, at this moment, there is no need to change anything if you're doing on a day-by-day basis. I would like to see a dramatic diminution of the personal interaction that we see. So let me clarify that because there was a little bit of a misunderstanding.
The fake news, big tech, and blue state liberals stole the election from President Trump. But here in Alabama, we're making sure that never happens. We have not and will not send absentee ballots to everyone and their brother. We banned the corrupt curbside voting, and our results will always be audited. I'm Kay Ivey. The left is probably offended. So be it. As long as I'm governor, we're going to protect your vote.
All right, guys, back to the show. Sauce, let's get into this story here with, before we get into the story, guys, I want to say that was a really, 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 really good conversation I had with Kevin McShane just yesterday. Really, really great individual. And, Sauce, this man does not let his health condition slow him down whatsoever. Very well engaged, not only in his community, but his entire country. He literally travels all over Canada. He gets into the U.S. He got done telling me that, he really enjoys Central Florida, mainly in Orlando. And the man is, he's phenomenal. Really, really good, well-endowed individual. Wish we had a lot more like him. You know what I mean?
I wish I could have been part of that. You know what we could do is we could try to see if we could do an interview sometime with him again in the next couple of weeks or so. When I'm actually
we're gonna definitely look into his schedule. I know he has a busy schedule because as he is a motivational speaker, he goes on to a lot of different shows. He's been featured on some American talk shows as well as regular talk shows in Canada. And he stays busy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's I give him kudos for that. And I wish I could have been part of that interview, but and the sad part is that I wish I wish I was with that yesterday and stuff. It's interesting how you start your podcast and stuff, and being invited on podcasts and stuff, and then what the school does. Oh, are we going to that subject or no? Are we going to continue?
Yeah, we'll go into it a little bit. I just wanted to say,
okay.
like he is a huge, you're showing interest of. You wish you were there yesterday, but he's and we understand, Sash, you have a busy schedule, man. I mean, you're a lot younger than me and Eric and everybody here on the show, but you're still at school, and the viewers, they should know that by now. And they understand, like you have a busy schedule there, you're trying to, get your education, pretty much done, right? How long do you have?
So we have till May 8th. Or May 8th is when we'll be home for 2 weeks for May 8th. So I should be in order to I'll keep my education for my pastoral and stuff, so I can have some credentials, so I can become ordained minister or something like that. But this definitely is interesting, how you see so many. I don't know if we're going to go there into it yet, but are we going to go into there or not yet? Not quite yet.
Yeah, we're just about going to go into there. You touched on you want to be an ordained minister. I actually have a family member, a cousin of mine that actually is he's an ordained minister, and he also does other avenues in his church community on the other side of Georgia as well here. So that's really cool. You want to go into other types of work. That's awesome, man.
Oh, absolutely. And and be ordained minister, but as well as not, as continuing fighting for this country and, fighting for what preserved. Because, the reason why I want to become a pastor, or, I would like to become a pastor, is because, we need, strong men and women in a pastoral role behind the pulpit, telling the word of God. But at the same time, we also need men and women of faith to even continue to fight for this country, just like how it was founded. Because most of your founding fathers were heavily into ministers, or they were most of your politicians back in the early, when this country first started, were your pastors. And they were strong, so they were guided by God, and I feel like that's where we need this country to be guided back onto, because this has gone way off this.
Well, we were seeing that a little bit. Yeah, we were seeing that slowly under Trump. Trump was actually. He actually even said, you should never worship the government. You should worship the Almighty God. And are we doing that right now? No. This new administration, the Biden administration, they want us to actually worship them, and they want us thinking that, we owe a set of gratitude to them. We don't owe them. I'll say it on my show. It's unfiltered. We don't owe them shit, Sauce.
No, and that's the whole thing is, and look what they're trying to pull. They're pulling the same exact cards they are as what North Korea is doing, and with, because we're giving you the stimulus check, then you owe us something, and if you or for example, well, because we're giving you such a low tax rate, or because we're charging you so much taxes, it's causing us to be dependent upon us, or dependent upon you, to crawling on your knees. That's what the whole big spectrum is. Or, for instance, I did a thesis paper on gay marriage, actually, or on not gay marriage, on grooming this next generation, and that was my big thesis paper. And I was like, I have to finish it tonight, but it's just very interesting writing about how, wow, where did that change? And it really sparked when Baker versus Nelson hit the Supreme Court and it was tossed. The moment that was tossed out of the Supreme Court, which we used to have a conservative Supreme Court back in the day, back in the 1970s. And so did you know that the first state that really pushed for the LGBTQ state, you know what that was? You know what state that was?
What's that?
You got to guess.
What state it was? Well, you're talking about in the 1970s, right?
Yeah, 1975 or 1972. There was a
God,
first
now,
state.
Sash, you're testing my knowledge here. Hold on. And I'm not going to have any help from Eric or, Alicia here on the show right now. I'm
no
going to
Google.
have to guess. Yeah, I'm going to have to guess the great state of Texas, maybe.
No, actually, Texas did not push the LGBTQ. It was actually Maryland. Was a very, very first
Maryland?
state. Maryland. Yep.
Really?
Maryland. Yeah, Maryland was the very first state.
I was actually going to go Texas as my first, and then possibly California as the second.
Why would you say Texas, if I may ask? I thought Texas was like so hard red. They bleed red, white, and blue. I don't know.
Actually, if you look at it, man, Texas they weren't as conservative back then as they are now. And I actually read up on that, and I was actually baffled when we reading that. I'm like, what? Texas was liberal? You're telling me they were liberal at one point? Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that. Well,
yeah,
and then
I didn't know that either.
And then, and so then once it happened in the grooming bill, and that's when the really part of the grooming started really happening for this next generation. So then Baker versus Nelson went back to the Supreme Court, and what happened was that, according to the Supreme Court, they said that was not substantial evidence. You can't, just because the church said no, the church did have the right, but then Maryland was the first state to push it. And then surprisingly, California was one of the very other first states, to pass it. But they were, of course, California, they go past and then really gun ho on all their legislation. So then California is the one that started the tax subsidies. If you're gay or if you identify yourself as the alphabet people, you actually had.
Wait, what do you call them? The alphabet people?
Yeah, there's, how many letters are? Okay, so there's LGBTQ. Here's what there's so many, because there's there's LGBTQ, RSTUV, WX, Y and Z. Now I know my ABCs. Now I know my alphabet.
Everybody, if you want a educational lesson from Sas here, for all you liberal nut jobs out there, you could step into the digital classroom with Sas here, and he can actually teach you. Because, Sash, we actually have people out there that are dumbfounded and they don't know anything. They literally live life through social media, false narratives, and whatever the mainstream media is feeding them every single day on garbage.
Well, and I bet if you ask any of your liberal friends how many letters there are in the alphabet people, the reason why I call them the alphabet people is because there's 101 letters, officially 101 genders that people identify themselves as. So I'm like 101. I'm like, what more do you need?
This is nothing new, Sauce. I actually heard this crap on ABC's The View. What was it, like almost a couple months ago, and they were actually talking about that. They didn't refer it as the alphabet people, but they did say that there was like over 100 different genders and everything else. But I mean, this is just it's idiocy. You know what I mean, man?
Yeah, it's very it's so whack, and that's the whole thing. But so many people are so bent on it. They're like, well, we got to cater to all of them. So then what happened was that, okay, so then after it was pushed, and after it was like, really, they try to not scrutinize it, but after they so then here's how it started going in the church though. So after it was in 1971 when Bill Clinton passed Don't Ask, Don't Tell a bill, and that was part of the Bakers versus Nelson's Supreme Court, and that's when Bill Clinton put in his radical Supreme Court in during that time, and that's when they passed, and that Don't Ask, Don't Tell pretty much tossed that Baker versus Nelson. So then when a pastor would actually ask, hey, what are you guys doing? And if I want to do your wedding, there has to be something like, are you guys gay or something like that? But a pastor could not ask because it was Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And that's how it crept into the church slowly. And then you have Pope Francis coming out stating, well, we all support, they're all God's children and stuff. And, now I understand, and that's how it actually crept in the church. But what's scary about it is that we have more and more churches supporting the LGBTQRS, the alphabet people, and that they're giving up their doctrine teaching of just teaching the Bible and teaching about how God loves you and that we should love everyone no matter what. But at the same time, we need to hold them accountable for our brothers and sisters in Christ. We can't just let them stray away. So now we have the Methodist Church. Look at the Methodist Church, for instance. They're a perfect example of this left-wing doctrine push of grooming this next generation. And, it's interesting because the Methodist Church is about to split because of this whole grooming legislation that's being passed and this whole push for this LGBTQRST. They're splitting because they're like, one side is like, we can't stand it anymore. There's so much, it's always in our face. We can't preach about what we want. We have to preach about how we need to preach to this minority people, but we can't preach to the other people, and we can't say certain things because the human rights people are going to come at us. So the bigger and then you look at this campus that we're on, and you look at these other college campuses.
Yeah, I was going to say, before we get into the campus story, Sauce, this Don't Ask, Don't Tell law that Bill Clinton passed in the early 90s. I have to laugh about that a little bit because, maybe he also passed that for, Don't Ask, Don't Tell when I had Monica behind the Oval Office desk, right?
Or Don't Ask, Don't Tell what the curtain stains are.
Yeah. But I mean, is that actually going on with the campuses there, especially where you're at there in Wisconsin?
So it's funny, actually. So okay, so let me tell you about this whole experience. So my appointment, not my appointment, sorry, I'm trying to multitask and it's not working very well.
Oh, you're fine, you get it.
Okay, so what happened is so I just want to tell you, I'm actually very busy. So right now, as we're doing the show, I'm actually emailing people off of my phone, telling them, hey, it's pretty sad. That's when you tell that you're way too busy. Okay, but either way, I'm getting distracted. So what happened is. Yeah. Okay, so
I was gonna say, Eric, get Sauce a water, but he's not in the same studio as us. But I would have Eric give you a water. The man needs a water before he took it, Sauce.
Okay, so what happened is that so they're all good until and this is part of the repercussions of the January 6th article that came out. And they're all good until that came out, and then once he started stating that, I'm like, hey, you know what? I think that we need to be more biblical and that we need to be more strong. We need to have more strong and conservative Christians in our politics. Well, that changed all of a sudden because now, they took down all the eclipses I was on, and they stated I was the campus stated that I was like a terrorist, and that, and they removed me from all extracurricular activities I was in because I was a threat to the campus. And so they're pretty much shadow banning me as we're speaking.
Good grief, man. That's terrible, Sauce.
But the scary part is that that's our next generation, that they're teaching us our next generation. And half of the people there, those are your older people, and today our professor, he's like, I remember back in Bear days, when Russia was like a big threat to us. Well, and, they feared communism and stuff. Well, where did that come? I mean, how come you're not fearing communism now? That's the whole thing, is that you're fearing you're stating that Russia's all bad and stuff, but you're doing the same exact thing as Russia's doing. The college campuses are doing the same exact thing.
They're contradicting themselves in a way. I mean, they're saying that, communism and socialism is so bad in other countries, but then when you go to question it actually happening here in America, They're like, oh, no, that's not communism. This isn't socialism. A form of a mask over your face, or what I like to call it, a freaking diaper, right? Oh, no, that's not a form of socialism or communism. No. That's for our own protection, so we don't get sick and this and that. Oh, yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah, and see, and that's another thing is that this whole thing, and now we have to write like certain papers where we have to now use pronouns actually. So I was writing my paper, and we can't say mankind anymore. It has to be humankind.
You can't say mankind?
No, because that's sexist, and that's goes against our new college guidelines. And so that's
okay. So if it's sexist, then what are we going to say? We can't say female because male is at the end of fee, right? What are we going to call them? A woman? There's still men at the end of woman, right? I mean,
and isn't woman a sexist word too? Only a sexist would say. Well,
hold on, Sas. Before you get into that, like this type of terminology that we're using in today's society has, like, literally, it gives like almost like a really bad taste in the bottom of my gut, in my stomach. Whenever I hear this crap, they're like, "Oh, you can't say female, man. You can't say this and that." And like what we're talking about, I'm using it for an example. You can't say that because it's very sexist. And women do have their rights, and they do play a big part of our society. Yeah, they do. There's very successful women and large companies, very large companies, some more successful than men.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that, Sas. I mean, if you want.
Well, and the whole thing is that the frustrating part is that why are colleges now so focused on sensitivity more than anything? Why don't we? We pay money. We pay money to learn. We don't pay money to listen to somebody's opinion. That's what the View is for. Okay, I don't go to college. People don't go to college to make sure that they get punished if they don't use the right pronoun. They don't go to see. That's why go to college then. If you're going to be lectured all day, well, you got to use all these pronouns and you got to cater to all the alphabet people. That just ruins the whole college experience, because then you're afraid if you, mess up a word. And a matter of fact, you do get in trouble on our campus if you do mess up. If you say the wrong pronoun, you actually do get in trouble. You get
they punish you for saying the wrong pronoun?
They do it in your paper, and if you slips out when you're talking to somebody, they can report you.
All right. For instance, okay, I have two. Was it two? Yeah, I have two major universities near me. Okay, well, actually, there's three. There's Georgia State, right, and then we have Georgia Tech, which is in Midtown Atlanta, and then we also have the University of Georgia, right, in Athens, Georgia. Okay. Yep. Now, if I go to either one of those three universities, say I go to Athens, right? Athens seems to be a little bit more conservative than, the other two in Atlanta, right? Say I want to go to the University of Georgia, right? Home of the Bulldogs, right? Yep. I step on campus there, which is right in downtown Athens. I go into campus there and I use the wrong pronoun. Okay, they're gonna walk me off campus, you're saying?
Well, okay, so you're gonna find more of these campuses in blue states, and so Wisconsin's a blue state.
Hey, Sas, Georgia. I don't know if I should tell you this, but Georgia is kind of more of a liberal state now. Atlanta makes a huge. I mean, even though it is somewhat conservative, what's left of it, mainly in the country areas of Georgia. But Atlanta Metro, man, makes up like 50, almost 60% of the state. So, I wouldn't say Georgia's more red than blue. It's more half, like it leans like 60-40, right? Which is sad, but
isn't that scary? Well, and so now what happened is that, your colleges, so you can get and if you mess up so many times, they can actually kick you off campus.
That's terrible, man.
And so that's a problem is that, and so then I'm like, why do people even want to go to college at this point? If they're going to be electric, and you have a lot of these Christian families really questioning. I had a Christian family come talk to me and actually called. They listened to my podcast and they called me. They're like, why do I want to send my kid to a college? And a matter of fact, they enrolled. So their daughter is graduating this year from high school. Okay, so they applied for Liberty University. And did you know that they called Liberty University and said, no, I want my money back. I want my early payment back because I don't want my kid to go into college. And so what happened is that they kept on badgering the school, and eventually the school gave in and said, okay, well, we're going to give you your money back because of what they were learning out from all these Christian colleges as well. See, and that's what's scary about it is that, it starts off at your public schools. And then once they,
especially the indoctrination of what they're doing with these kids today. I mean, I've touched about me with that subject. I touched that on my podcast episodes, several episodes about what the hell they're teaching these kids now about transgenderness. It's disgusting. It makes me want to go over to the damn school and say, what the hell is wrong with you? Teach the kids about patterns, colors, and counting to 10. Don't teach this kid that it's okay that kid has a this and that. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying, right? I mean, it's disgusting, Sauce. I mean, come on, man. You and I, when we were in school, I know you're a lot younger than me, but I'm sure they weren't teaching you about it's okay to be a boy when you're really a girl, right?
Or I'm sure it's okay to not. Or you like dogs? Oh yeah, okay. Let me get you a human-sized dog pad, and let me also get you a human-sized cat litter. What are they going to teach them next about bestiality?
I mean, come on.
And speaking of bestiality, guess what? In Wisconsin, for the first time,
they teach that in Madison, Wisconsin.
No, actually, our Governor Evers now, it used to be a felony in Wisconsin. It is no longer a felony. It is actually just a slap on the hand.
What?
So we're the first.
You're telling me if you're a sick bastard and you're into that crap, you won't go to jail for having sexual crap with a dog or a cat or any type of animal?
Nope, it is a misdemeanor, and I'm surprised people didn't know about that. See, but this is how suppressed the media really is. They don't want to cover that. Oh, it was an executive order. So Governor Evers passed it last year in June when the Alphabet Month came around, and he said that love is love and love has no boundaries and stuff. So he passed it in order to make sure that you had equality for all people.
And this is in the state of Wisconsin. There's just a slap on the wrist if somebody has sex with a dog or a cat or any type of animal.
Yep, because that following month of last year, they did a special episode where this gal out of Eau Claire, of course Eau Claire had to be Eau Claire, where it's up in the North Woods. She said that she identified herself as a wolf, so she slept with the wolves and stuff, and she had like feelings for wolves.
I do remember. Thanks, Eric, producer Eric.
That's from Wisconsin.
Producer Eric reminded me in my other earpiece here on the headset. He's telling me about some kind of liberal woman that basically put out a YouTube video. This was like 2-3 months ago, right? Right, Sauce? That she was like roaming through like the woods or something like that.
Yeah, she was howling and she was like sleeping with the wolves and kissing the wolves supposedly. And you know what state? Well, that's only in Wisconsin.
This was featured on like Hannity or Tucker, right?
Yeah, Tucker Carlson. It was Tucker.
Yeah, now it's coming back to me. Tucker actually had a whole piece on this, and he was laughing his ass off too about like.
I was embarrassed.
It was. I mean,
I'm like, great. Now people think Wisconsin is just a bunch of loonies, and they're thinking that we're just a bunch of sickos. People don't want. No wonder why people are moving out of Wisconsin.
With the exception of you all are sickos. I mean, your governor or whatever is passing laws saying it's okay to have sexual relations with animals. I mean, that's kind of sick, man.
And that's the scary part. So it starts off in here's what I noticed about the whole education system. Well, did you know? Okay, so our governor actually used to be the education superintendent, or like the State Department for your education, like Department of Instructions. He used to be the DPI president for state of Wisconsin. So he was a teacher, a lifelong teacher, and then he went and became like your state like education coordinator or something like that. And then the only reason why he won was because of Madison and Milwaukee that gave him over 250,000 votes, and that's why he only won Wisconsin. It's because of Milwaukee and Madison. And
Yeah.
and see, and the sad part is that you have the new grading policies that came out for Wisconsin. He told the DPI to lower the standards than before. So now we have two. So you're talking about the past 2 years that the kids were still in COVID and over Zoom. You're talking about, oh, well, we got to lower those standards because we're under a certain criteria. Well, what happened to the other criteria that were implemented before by Governor Scott Walker? So you're dumbing down this generation. Like, no wonder why we're teaching about it's okay to sleep with wolves
and just look at the kids, man, in school, from K to 12, especially college, man,
absolutely.
What the mask era did to these kids. I mean, it killed their self-esteem, right? It killed everything, man. These kids are so afraid now. Come on, Sas. We have to understand this, that the mask crap is, this pandemic is pretty much over, which I'll get into the whole Fauci thing just in a little bit. If you heard that just came out earlier today.
Well, and here's the whole thing. It's not just only your masks. I spoke to teachers and they said they're afraid to go to work because they've been having more school infights that's caused the police to come.
Because look what this administration's done. It's demonized even the educators.
Yep. See, and that's what's causing.
They're afraid to even step up to the school boards. They're afraid. Even the professors in colleges. What's left of them. The halfway decent professors out there that actually don't believe in this woke shit, they're so afraid, Sas, to speak up and say something against this radicalism in America that if they say something, they're afraid they're going to lose their job, Yeah,
and see, and that's the whole thing. And if the kids don't, and if the kids don't want to see, and that's the whole thing is that we need education systems. We need people to hold the education systems accountable. And the sad part is that, of course, I'm going to reiterate this. The really sad part that I have to say with what's going on in Wisconsin and what's going on is that so many of the people, have lost touch, and how, I don't know what, see, and that's the whole thing is that you have to, in Wisconsin, I'm starting to think that people actually did cheat in Wisconsin when it came to election because so many.
They did. Sure, they did. They did. Not only did they cheat in Wisconsin, but all the key battleground states, Pennsylvania, the state of Georgia here, mainly in Fulton and Gwinnett counties here that circulate Metro Atlanta. They cheated all over the place, Sas. Now, you talk about Wisconsin, right? What's going on with the education system, the schools, everything else. I'm sure you have other friends that are in other areas of the country. Do, any of your friends in other areas is saying the same thing that's basically happening in Madison?
Well, so what's happening in Madison, I actually have a couple of people in Madison. And so they said that they reinstated the mask thing. So of course they did. And they also stated that you actually do get in trouble, like the whole pronoun and stuff. And that they're starting to get rid of testing in college because they're stating that the college test is considered being racist because they're stating that,
Wait, hold the phone, Sas.
That's in Madison, Wisconsin.
The testing. Yeah. They're going to stop testing because it's considered racist. How?
Because they're stating that the Chinese people are supposedly smarter than the white people, so then the white people are the woke, the BLM people are going against it, and by doing boycotts and doing sit-ins outside the classrooms, and so the teachers are like, "Oh, okay, you don't need to take tests, okay? We just need to talk about our feelings." So one of my classmates, it's actually in Madison, they spent the whole 90 minutes talking about how they felt instead of taking the test.
But Sas, how does a test here in America that has, it's a different type of, curriculum here in America versus China. The test in China on a college level, you can't say it's the same type of test that you would find in America. So how is that racist in any form? Do they think about before the stuff before that comes out of their mouth? Like they're saying, hold on, I know you want to comment because you're full of energy tonight. Eric is like, man, he's got to give that man a bottle of water. Listen, before you comment on this, and please, Sas, if you got water, man, get some water. You don't fucking fall off the damn chair while you're talking.
Hey, no, I'm
but
sorry.
listen,
I'm very excited, but
I know you are. You're full of passion on this, and we love it. But, how can you say that a test that they're given in American colleges and other universities is racist and probably full of bigotry and all this other crap, and they're going to relate it to the Chinese? First of all, let me say something. Yes, the Chinese are very, very more advanced than Americans. I'll give them that. Okay. They've been like that for years, Sauce. But here's the thing. How can they say it's racist? They have different testing scores that they use in China. Don't they think before they talk?
yeah, I don't know. And see, and that's
I'm sorry for getting excited, Sauce, and it might sound like I'm screaming, but you know me by now. I love getting excited here on the show because half the shit that comes out of this damn country is just I have to scratch my head sometimes on it.
you're like, man, this can't be really happening. Well, look at what Seattle's done. Look what Seattle's done with not testing anymore, like in their high schools and stuff, because like they don't want to offend people that aren't good test takers. Well, maybe instead of like focusing on pronouns, why don't you actually start teaching the materials itself and actually making people study instead of, you didn't call me by the right pronoun, so I'm not going to take this test. Oh, okay. No, I mean, what? I don't know. Just focus on. I'm flabbergasted. It's like you have better things to focus on, not just pronouns. And seeing when you see what they're trying to do, though, right? By not taking the test, they're trying to really undermine the education system by not allowing, by dumbing down this country even more, and by dumbing down our next generation. So our next generation they don't have the real application and aren't in charge of math or isn't in charge of, what real world problems. So
sure.
And see, and that's what's the scary part about it. And half of these professors are like your grandparents and are your older people. That's what's scary about it. It's like, it's not your new generation, but your high school teachers now are your very just out of college. And I call colleges a petri dish for communism because they just breed communism. That is what's psychotic. And
it's very psychotic. Yeah, you're damn right it is.
And that's why I've reached out to Mike Rowe, and that's why I'm a huge proponent of trade school. Being an electrician, being
trade school. Since we're on that topic, Sauce, I want to get into that topic, but I gotta get into a quick promotion here, if you don't mind. We're gonna get into
absolutely
the trade schools here, but I gotta get into this, guys. Check this out. Alrighty, guys, pick up the book today. Can America Survive After Biden? Available on Amazon, as well as Amazon Kindle, guys. If you have the unlimited plan, you get it for free. If not, guys, it is selling for $4.99. Let's save free speech in America. Let's join Elon Musk in providing that to other platforms. Let's kill this mass forever agenda by the corrupted politicians. Guys, this book has a lot of knowledge, and inside this book, you will learn stuff that mainstream will not tell you or does not want you to understand. Pick it up today, everywhere. That's right. That's right. We're now on Amazon Music as well as Audible. For all you guys that have Amazon Alexa devices, whether it's the Echo or the regular Amazon Alexa screen device, next time you want to listen to us on your device, just say, "Hey Alexa, play the Patriot Angle podcast," and we will pop up. Alrighty, guys, we're back here on the show. We got Sauce here joining us. Welcome back, everyone. Sauce, let's get into this trade school scenario. I guess you're a big supporter of trade schools. I am too, man.
Oh, absolutely, because your trade schools are going to be your long lasting and they can last for generations to come. Because one thing, because if you have trade school, you can build like if you have electricians or if you have like people that do your garbage and stuff, your composting, or even a plumber and stuff. Now, I'm not demonizing colleges because in order to be a doctor, you have to go to college, but there's you have to have a fair balance because I think we need to somehow pass a bill. And that's what I liked about President Trump and Mike Rowe, because they really Mike Rowe gives a scholarship for anyone that wants to go to trade school. Anyone that wants to go to a trade school, graduate, and then have that trade and at least sustain it for about 2 years in order to, keep up the scholarship. And so, because you don't really know, because I feel like that there's such a push on a 4-year school that so many people get out with being in thousands of dollars in debt when they could go to another avenue.
Yeah, I mean, we used to have. Yeah, I mean, cutting you off there. I'm sorry about that. But
No,
we used to have, we used to have trade schools when I was in high school, actually. We used to call them vocational schools. And basically what you would do is you would do like 4 hours of high school. And then the last remaining hours that you would normally have at the high school would be spent at the vocational school. And you would learn a trade, man. You would learn like construction. You would learn like how to drive a forklift, how to, fix a car, whether it's mechanical or, auto body. They had stuff for the ladies there and, to, learn to be a beauty technician, whether it's cosmetology or, working on nails or this and that. But that stuff was great, man, back then. Like, where has that gone? Right.
Yeah, and it's like it's not cool to become like even culinary arts, like all these chefs.
We used to have that too. Like, just to kind of say, just a short little list of it. But I mean, there were so many things back then. I think now it's like, I don't know. I think it's more of a budget type of push thing now that they don't want to do it.
With color or with
which is vocational together. Yeah. I mean, I think it's more of a budget thing now and whether they want to do it in high school or, kind of like in the middle of college level, it's more of a budget. I think it's like, because then they have to like hire more educators, Sauce. They have to, make more time and this and that. They have to build more buildings for it and this and that. I just don't think the school boards, the districts there, they want to invest. You know what I mean?
Well, and see, that's called investing in our next generation, investing for this next generation, and here's what I like to see. And, the whole thing is that since when has education gone to the federal level? Oh, wait, since COVID, duh. No, I'm being sarcastic because why couldn't the education systems go back to the states? Now, unless if you're California, then you're just a lost cause. But if you're besides California and New York, the education should be left at the states level, because that is, and the reason why is because you're going to have less of a push. You're going to have more. You have more of your state assembly and your state senate that's going to have more of a say, not people in DC that are out of touch of reality, that are pushing for this gender garbage. So if you leave it at the state levels, you're going to get different curriculums being pushed and being implemented. So you're going to compete hypothetically against other states even. And then you're also going to compete. So if one college out of state says, hey, you know what, you have higher ACT scores, or if you have higher grades, why don't you come to us? So it's going to become a competition. And then furthermore,
but here's the thing, Sauce, like back then, man, we never had that type of mindset where we were like, oh, it has to go to the state level or it has to go to the local level or the federal level. We weren't thinking like that. We left it up to the districts, right? The school districts. Because we didn't have a problem. We knew then, back then in the 80s and the 70s, right, where we weren't going to have a strong issue that basically made a huge argument of it all. people didn't think like that back then, Sauce. Now it's like, oh, well, if you want something done, you have to do this and do that and do this and do that. I mean, it's gotten to a point where sometimes I think it's kind of out of control. You know what I mean?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And also the teachers unions too. Since when do the teachers union control? Okay. Well, I don't know if you heard this though. So when President Joe Biden, or when idiot Biden, he's like, well, I can be your parents now. Now, if Eau Claire is being scrutinized heavily for teachers coming out stating, well, if your parents don't disagree, like if your parents don't accept your genders or stuff, we can be your parents from now on. Now, if that is what you call a psychotic thinking, and that's what you call, okay, what is really going on in our education system, and what is really going on even behind our school districts, and our school board?
It's more radicalized, Sauce. It's more
heavily.
It's more of a deep state of muck, which we had on the show more than a few episodes back with a former intelligence officer that worked for the CIA, actually, Pedro Israel Orta, that touched on that very, very briefly with the deep state of muck. And that's what's basically going on right now in the country, with this administration. It's more, do what I tell than not what I do. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's the whole thing, is that we need to break away from that. We need to break away, and we need to bring education back to your families. And there's nothing wrong of homeschooling. I hate to say it, but
you mentioned homeschooling. Hold on. You mentioned homeschooling, right? It works well for the military. I happen to have a few family members, that are in the military, past and present. Right, which I won't mention on the show for privacy issues, but it works well for them. Let's bring it back. Let's influence it a little bit better. Maybe if you influence homeschooling, you'll get rid of this radicalized woke crap that's going on right now in public schools.
Well, and then, how you also influence is that you give tax credits and you give tax subsidies for families, and you give them, something that can help their pocketbooks, and then even like extra scholarships through grants if they decide to homeschool. But on the flip side, though, what kind of curriculum are you you're going to have to implement a new curriculum to go by. And that's where you have these stronger Christians curriculums that I think I'm a huge proponent of. For example, Prager University in Hillsdale, they offer homeschooling packages for families. Well, that's not cheap. That's very expensive. And if you decide to homeschool your kids, I think it should be acceptable that, hey, if you're going to keep your kid at home, we're going to offer you we're going to offer you Prager University, or we're going to offer you to pick what kind of a curriculum you want.
Well, Sauce, they already give tax credits to people that are, in the military with homeschooling. And, they do the tax programs that parents that do elect that type of education choice for their children. So it's there, but should we see more of it being introduced?
Oh, absolutely. We should see more of it, and we should see a big promotion of it. And we should see grants, not just. But now, I don't know if you heard, but the sad part is that it's going to go away, sadly, because apparently more and more kids are being taken out of school. And see, that's the scary part, is that, that's when you think that the schools have gone way too big, and even your university.
Right, but if they do more of a tax program for the homeschooling, right? You think that, the taxes, as a taxpayer will go up? I'm sure it will. I'm sure that this type of administration we have in the White House right now, they're probably looking at that. I'm sure they're Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and everything are like, let's try to take it out of the W-2s, right? Let's try to put this as a sneaky tax when it comes to, filing the taxes there in January. Yeah, I'm sure they looked at that. I'm sure they're still looking at it right now.
Well, and that's why you hold off until this radical agenda. That's why this radical administration gets out. So then you bring in even a DeSantis or even a President Trump back in. where they can re-implement it, and then they can. But see, and here's the whole thing. My question is, I have a question about this. How is it that President Trump, when he did it, all of his stuff is being wiped away, while when Obama did it, when Obama passed Obamacare or all these bills and stuff, why are we still paying the repercussions of it? And what Joe Biden's doing is that it seems like your Democrats do more of a long-term damage than short-term damage, but your Republicans do.
I said this. Yeah, I think you answered this on the show like a couple episodes back when you were on. Here's the thing, Sauce, okay? And for all the listeners out there that, may be questioning the same thing. Your Democrat, Sauce, sadly, will never be a party of the Republicans. They've never been like that. They've been like that closely when JFK was in power, right? But we have to basically say this, right? This is not the same party as JFK. This is not the same party as JFK. I'll say it again. This is not the same party of JFK. This is an entirely different party. It's a radicalized party, okay, that is not for the blue collar, not for the middle class, not for the working man. They are totally opposite of conservative Republican. Now, I use that word loosely, conservative Republican, because there's different types of Republicans, even into today's society. You have a conservative Republican, and you have more of a Republican that we like to come to calling them rhinos, that just work the very same way that these new radicalized socialist Democrats work. They want to hike the taxes up, and they want to make it 10 times worse for the average Joe out there,
Absolutely. So, and that's the whole thing is that, and I noticed this as well, where, you look at your next door neighbor, for instance, they're more, you can see that whole brainwashing. You can see where that, I sometimes have to ask, man, you can't sit down with your next door neighbor anymore and discuss politics without them getting at your throat or without getting shamed and without getting
they're ready to rip your damn head off, and like, oh my God, like, how can you support that monster Donald Trump? He's a bigot. He's a racist. He doesn't care about the LGBTQ plus community. He's a sexist. He's a pig. Did you hear what he said about Stormy Daniels and everything else? He treats his wife like garbage. I'm like, do you actually live with this man? Do you know what goes on behind the doors of Donald Trump, whether he's in Florida at Mar-a-Lago or when he was president of the United States or when he was actually living in Manhattan at Trump Towers? Do you know what goes on with Donald Trump? No. So if you don't know, how the hell can you say these things about him? Well, that's kind of being a two-face, and you're going to ask the same question. Well, how can you say these bad things about Biden? Well, we see what Biden is doing. You see what Trump was doing, right? I mean, come on,
Yeah. So as we conclude, as we conclude the show, I think it's important that, we can't forget that, God is still sovereign at the end of the day and that we all win. Sometimes we feel like we're all defeated. I mean, there are days where I'm like, man, I feel like words like one win, but we are making small, we're seeing more local people running for office all through different, that inspires me. And we see a lot of people just being more patriotic. And I love seeing that now. And so that is my end take, as I am going to have to conclude because my computer is actually dying and I have to eat dinner. So.
Okay. If you do, head out of the studio here, we do understand. If we lose you, that's fine because I'm actually going to be closing up in about another 2-3 minutes. But I want to mention, guys, thanks very much, Sauce. It's always an honor having you on this show, buddy.
No problem, and don't forget my podcast. And you guys have a blessed day. Thank you so much again. I'll be back hopefully next week.
Yeah, not a problem, sir. Thanks very much. We'll see you next week. Guys, Sauce is actually going to get going here. Remember to check his podcast out. Remember, God loves you, and I'll meet you at the finish line. His podcast is available on Spotify, Google, and Apple. Tremendous individual, a very spiritual Christian man himself. Remember, guys, too, I mean, we are in the long fight here of America. We are. The fight is not over, okay? Hopefully in 2 years, when this garbage is all over, we'll understand things a little bit more clearly, right? A little bit more of an understanding, right? But I want to say something here as I conclude this podcast episode myself. We touched on a lot of different topics today, right? We touched about the new society today of this woke LGBTQ crap, which I don't support whatsoever. And, you kind of understood the viewpoints of the co-host here on the show, Sauce. He's a young kid, right? And he understands, he happens to go to college himself, and he's trying to, fight through this even in college up in Madison, Wisconsin, where he resides. And he sees it every single day. But here's the one point here, which I will make before I close it out, guys. If you see something that you don't agree with, don't be afraid to speak up. Now, you may think that, well, if I speak up, I'm going to get fired from my job. I'm going to, be kicked out of the school I'm in, or, my parents will neglect me and disown me, and I might even be neglected and disowned from my own family. Well, that all may happen, folks. I ain't going to lie. It all may happen. But you still have dignity in your voice. Remember that. We still have dignity and backbone that the Almighty gave us. Use it. Because I think by using this type of backbone, our voice, which is the most powerful element of our entire body, the voice, the human voice, it will truly save this country. It will. It will truly save this country. Remember, folks, next week we will be having a special guest joining us on Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern. You're going to want to check that out, guys. She happens to be a huge advocate in what she does, a huge supporter here of the show, first-time guest on the show. You're going to want to check that out. It's going to be a good one, I just have to say. And remember, guys, if you want to hear more episodes of the Patriot Angle podcast, you can find them on our website at patriotanglepodcast.com, which just went through a huge overhaul. A lot of new sections added on there, some great new features added on the website. All of our episodes are on the website. A lot of our Instagram content is posted on the website. So highly suggest you check that out. You can also follow us on Spotify, Google, and Apple. We are also on Amazon Music and Amazon Audible, as well as any Amazon Alexa device, whether it's the Echo or the screen itself. Just say, hey, Alexa, play the Patriot Angle podcast, and we will pop up on that device. Guys, it's been an honor. It's been a privilege delivering the true facts here on the show, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks a lot, guys.
You just heard an episode of the Patriot Angle podcast. Remember to follow us on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon Music, and Audible. Also streaming live on Twitch. Remember to follow and like us, guys, for unfiltered, uncensored, raw content. Also, please head over to www.patriotanglepodcast.com for all your exclusive Patriot Angle podcast content and material, as well as the merchandise website, www.patriotunfiltered.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.